Type shapes or outlines can be very easily used to mask an image. When placed against a stark color or yet another background image, this type effect can be very striking. The obvious rule for selecting a typeface for this effect is to choose a very bold display face, as opposed to one with slim stems and pointed serifs. In this exercise, I'll be showing you examples of both types. In the first example, where you wish to have the type filled with something other than a solid color, here's what I do. Here, I've chosen a very delicate display type. It would be ineffective to use this to mask another image, but you can still use it to fill it with something like a gradient for added impact. But first, you can kern any letter pairs by inserting the text cursor between the letters and holding down the Option or the Alt keys while using the arrow keys on the keyboard. In order to position a part of the text block in a creative way, I like to create it as a separate text layer entirely. I find that I'm able to combine them at a later point in the project with greater ease rather than to attempt to position them using the limited type placement options in the type dialog. And now you can position it easily. Once you have the type sized and positioned correctly, you can combine them. As you can see in the palette options, you cannot merge the top text layer because it's grayed out. You'll have to render both the text layers first. If there was any doubt that you might need to change the type characteristics, duplicate the text layers first and then render the copies. And now you're ready to merge down. In order to fill these type outlines with some content, you can either select the outlines and paste art into it, or the better way, in my opinion, is to create a clipping group of layers. I'll show you how. First, create a new layer. I'm going to fill this layer with a gradient using the foreground colors. To fill the type outlines with this gradient, all I have to do is to group the two layers together or create a clipping group. Hold down the Option or the Alt key and click on the line dividing the two layers. You'll see a different circular cursor as you do this. Now here's the beauty of this method. Even if you decide to change the contents of this layer on top, the outlines of the type below will always mask it or clip the contents. And there you go. And from here, you can add any layer effects that you like to our former text layer. For our next example, I'll use a large, blocky display face to display the contents of another image through the type outlines. I'll still use the technique of creating a clipping group of layers. Here I've dragged another image into the Layers palette, and now I'll create the type that'll mask this image. Move the text layer below and clip the image layer. To partially extend the clipped image, we'll need to duplicate the wave layer. And drag it below the grouped layers. You can now reduce the opacity and also change the blending mode so the images sit well next to each other. To further blend the seam, add a layer mask to this layer and place a gradient at the seam to blend the two images. And this is what the layer mask itself looks like. And here we have two examples of type masks.